The stadium was roaring. 80,000 people, hearts pounding, eyes glued to the stage, were about to witness something no one could have predicted. And at the center of it all stood Michael Jackson. The king of pop. The man who had moonwalked his way into history books, who had sold out shows across continents, who had become more myth than man. But on this night, something unexpected was about to happen. A stranger stumbled out of the shadows, a man, clearly intoxicated, swaggering his way toward the spotlight. He wasn't supposed to be there. He wasn't part of the act. He wasn't part of the dream carefully crafted by Michael Jackson's team. Yet somehow, he had found himself face to face with the most famous entertainer on earth. And instead of calling for security, instead of stopping the show, Michael Jackson did something unthinkable. What happened next would leave 80,000 fans screaming, crying, and whispering about this night for decades to come. Before we reveal exactly what Michael did, let's pause for a second. Because this moment, the drunk dancer, the challenge, the impossible response, wasn't just a one-off stunt. It was a reflection of who Michael Jackson really was, a glimpse into the artistry, humanity, and unpredictability that made him more than just a performer. So, grab your seat. Because what you're about to hear is not just a concert story, it's a story about genius colliding with chaos, and how one man transformed a potential disaster into one of the most legendary live moments ever captured. And if you love uncovering the hidden stories of music's greatest icons, don't forget to hit subscribe, tap that like button, and ring the bell so you never miss our deep dives into the untold legends of the stage. Share this video with anyone who still believes in the magic of Michael Jackson. Now, let's go back to that stage. Michael Jackson had performed in front of presidents, royalty, and millions of adoring fans. He had choreographed shows down to the last second. Every spotlight, every beat, every moonwalk was rehearsed, perfected, and timed to create pure spectacle. But this night was different. Because in the middle of his set, a man, clearly drunk, wandered from the crowd, climbed past the barricades, and staggered onto the stage. The audience gasped. Security began to move in. But Michael, instead of waving them forward, raised his hand, and stopped them. Why, what was he thinking? In that split second, Michael Jackson was faced with a decision. He could have treated it like a threat, an interruption, an embarrassment. But Michael wasn't just an entertainer. He was a master of moments. He knew how to turn mistakes into magic. So, he did something extraordinary. He challenged the intruder to dance. The stadium went silent. 80,000 people holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen. The drunk man wobbled, stumbled, and threw out a few awkward moves. The crowd laughed nervously. And then, Michael responded. Not with anger. Not with mockery. But with the elegance of a legend. He mirrored the man's clumsy steps, transformed them, elevated them, until what began as chaos turned into comedy, then into art. The audience exploded. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't rehearsed. But in that instant, Michael Jackson proved why he was called the greatest performer alive. He had taken an intruder's drunken mistake and transformed it into one of the most unforgettable moments of live entertainment ever witnessed, and the best part? The drunk man had no idea he had just shared the stage with the king of pop. That was just the beginning, because this moment tells us something deeper, not just about Michael's showmanship, but about the man himself. Why would he take that risk? What did it reveal about his relationship with his fans, and how did one unplanned dance-off become the stuff of legend? Stay with me, because the answer takes us far beyond that one night. It takes us into the heart of Michael Jackson's philosophy, his relentless pursuit of perfection, and the humanity behind the glittering glove. Before the laughter, before the roar of 80,000 fans, before a drunk stranger stumbled into history, there was silence. Michael Jackson stood backstage. His sequin jacket shimmering under the dim light, his fedora tilted just slightly forward, shadowing his eyes. The world knew him as untouchable. Perfect. The king of pop. But inside, Michael was a storm. The Dangerous World Tour wasn't just a concert series, it was a war with himself. Night after night, Michael pushed his body to the breaking point. Pyrotechnics timed to the millisecond. Dance moves rehearsed until his bones ached. Every breath, every gesture, every flick of his wrist, calculated to ignite entire stadiums that he wasn't just performing music. He was carrying the weight of an empire, but perfection comes with a cost. And that night, as the arena filled with chants of his name, Michael felt the crushing pressure of expectation. 80,000 people had come to see not just a man, but a myth. And myths are not allowed to falter, yet, despite the strain, despite the exhaustion, Michael had one secret weapon, his ability to turn the unexpected into legend, because Michael Jackson was not just a performer, he was a magician of moments. The dangerous tour was infamous for its scale. Entire cities would shut down as Michael arrived. Streets flooded with fans, barricades bending under the weight of screaming crowds. Journalists compared his appearances to the movements of a head of state. In Bucharest, in Tokyo, in Mexico City, fans fainted before he even sang a note. Ambulances were stationed outside arenas, not for accidents, but for hysteria. Michael was not just loved. He was worshipped, and yet, with that worship came danger. Overzealous fans storming barricades. Stalkers finding their way backstage. Even heads of state requesting private shows. Every concert was a controlled battlefield, and Michael was at its center, which is why what happened that night was so shocking. Because when an uninvited, intoxicated man broke the barrier and staggered onto Michael's stage, it wasn't just unusual. It was unthinkable. Let's set the scene. It was the summer of 1992. The stadium lights burned like fire, the heat of the crowd rising like waves against the stage. Michael had just finished one of his signature numbers, his body glistening with sweat, his breath heavy but steady. The crowd was chanting his name in a rhythm that felt like thunder. Michael. Michael. And then, it happened that a figure stumbled into the spotlight. At first, the crowd thought it was part of the act, another dancer, maybe a fan brought on stage for a special moment. But as the man swayed, his body language told the truth. He wasn't a dancer. He wasn't a performer. He was drunk. Security tensed. Their instincts screamed to rush the stage, to protect Michael, to preserve the show. But then, Michael did the unthinkable. He raised his hand. A small gesture. But in that gesture was a command. Stop. 80,000 people froze, watching. Why would Michael stop security? Why would he allow this man, this stranger, this chaos, to stay on his stage? The answer lies in Michael's genius. Michael Jackson lived for connection. For him, the audience wasn't just watching a performance, they were part of it. He believed that every person in the stadium, no matter how far from the stage, deserved to feel like they were part of something bigger than themselves, and now, standing before him, was chaos wrapped in human form. An interruption. A disruption. A potential disaster, but Michael saw an opportunity. What if, instead of shutting this man down, he embraced him? What if, instead of pushing him away, he made him part of the show? And so, the king of pop turned, and invited the drunk stranger to dance. The crowd went silent, the man blinked, confused, wobbling in disbelief. Was Michael Jackson, asking him to dance? What happened next would be burned into the memories of every single fan in that stadium forever, because Michael Jackson was about to take a mistake, and turn it into history. The man swayed forward, his shirt untucked, his eyes glassy. He stumbled across the polished stage floor as if he were walking on a ship at sea. The audience gasped. 80,000 fans, who had come to see perfection, were now watching chaos unravel in real time. The air grew tense, the kind of silence that swallows a stadium whole. Michael Jackson stood motionless, his silhouette backlit by a halo of spotlights. The fedora dipped, the sequin jacket flashing like a mirror ball. He didn't move. He didn't panic. He just watched. The drunk man lifted his arms and threw out a sloppy spin, his body nearly collapsing under its own weight. The crowd laughed nervously. Some booed. Others cheered, because they thought, maybe, just maybe, this was part of the show. And then Michael moved, not quickly. Not angrily. Slowly. Deliberately. He slid one foot forward, mimicking the man's unsteady shuffle. He stumbled, on purpose. He exaggerated the drunken spin, teetering just enough to make the audience erupt in laughter. In a heartbeat, Michael had transformed ridicule into rhythm. The stranger was no longer an intruder. He was now Michael's dance partner. What followed was unlike anything the world had ever seen. The drunk man flailed his arms like a windmill. Michael mirrored him, but with precision, turning wild swings into choreography. The man staggered backward. Michael glided into a smooth moonwalk that ended exactly where the man had fallen. The contrast was electric. Chaos versus control, drunken clumsiness against godlike artistry. The stadium exploded in laughter, screams, and applause, and yet, Michael never mocked him. That was the brilliance. He could have turned the man into a punchline. He could have humiliated him in front of 80,000 people. But Michael didn't believe in humiliation. He believed in elevation. So instead of laughing at him, Michael danced with him. He made the man feel, if only for a moment, like he belonged on that stage. Imagine being in that crowd. You had paid to see the most famous entertainer alive. You expected the moonwalk, the spins, the iconic poses. You expected magic, but not like this. Not a moment that felt raw, unrehearsed, unpredictable. You were watching history write itself, second by second, move by move, and then came the turning point. The drunk man collapsed onto the stage floor, unable to keep up. The crowd roared with laughter and concern. Security tensed, ready to step in, but Michael wasn't done. He bent down, leaned close, and offered his hand. In that gesture, silent, simple, human, Michael told the world something about himself. That even in the middle of chaos, even when the spotlight burned brightest, he saw people. He saw dignity. He saw humanity. The man staggered back to his feet, supported by the king of pop himself. And for a split second, the stadium didn't see a drunk intruder and a superstar. They saw two men, dancing, sharing a stage, sharing a moment that would never be repeated. The finale came like thunder. The band, sensing the energy, improvised a riff. The lights swirled. And Michael Jackson, seizing the moment, exploded into a flawless spin, landing on his toes in that gravity-defying freeze that only he could do. The crowd lost control. 80,000 people screamed as one. The drunk man, overwhelmed, stumbled backward into the arms of security. He was gently led away, still dazed, perhaps unaware that he had just shared a stage with history, and Michael didn't miss a beat. He straightened his jacket, tipped his fedora, and launched straight into the next song as if nothing had happened. But for those who were there, something had happened. Something unforgettable, because in that brief, chaotic, magical dance, Michael Jackson reminded the world why he wasn't just a performer. He was a phenomenon. For a few seconds after the drunk dancer was led away, the stadium was pure chaos. Some fans were still laughing, clutching their stomachs at the absurdity of what they just witnessed. Others were wiping away tears, overwhelmed by the humanity of it all. And some were simply stunned, staring at the stage in disbelief, asking themselves, did that really just happen? But Michael Jackson never explained. He didn't break character, didn't grab a microphone to comment on the interruption. He simply carried on, as if this bizarre, unscripted duel of dance had always been part of the master plan, and in a way, maybe it was, because for Michael, the stage was a sacred space. He believed that everything that happened there, every mistake, every interruption, every ounce of chaos, could be transformed into art. When the concert ended that night, fans poured into the streets. The story spread like wildfire. Did you see it? Michael turned a drunk man into his dance partner. It was insane. He didn't even break character. The footage, shaky and grainy in those pre-smartphone days, was passed from hand to hand, copied onto VHS tapes, whispered about in fan clubs. It became one of those legendary stories that lived larger in memory than in any official broadcast, because the official cameras, they tried to cut around it. Michael's team, ever protective of his image, considered the incident an embarrassment. An interruption in the flawless dream they wanted to project, but fans knew better. They had witnessed something real. Something unpolished, unscripted, and unforgettable. The press, of course, had a field day. some tabloids ran with headlines like "Drunken Fan Crashes Michael's Concert" and "King of Pop Confronted on Stage." They painted it as a security breach, a scandal, even a failure of control, but others saw the deeper truth. They praised Michael's calmness, his grace under pressure, his refusal to humiliate a stranger even when the world was watching. One critic wrote, "Only Michael Jackson could take a drunk man stumbling on stage and turn it into a performance. He didn't just keep the show going, he made it better." And in that sentence lay the essence of Michael's genius, because think about it, most performers, confronted with an intruder, would freeze. Some would panic. Many would call security and never mention it again. But Michael? He leaned into the chaos. He invited it in. He transformed it into entertainment that he didn't just control the stage. He controlled the story, and maybe that's why fans loved him so deeply. Not because he was perfect, but because even when the world threw imperfection at him, he turned it into magic. But what about Michael himself? After the show, did he laugh about it? Did he scold his team for letting it happen? Did he reflect on the risk he'd just taken? The truth is, Michael rarely spoke openly about these moments. He kept his thoughts guarded, his private reflections hidden. But those close to him revealed something telling. Michael believed deeply in spontaneity. That he once said, "The magic is in the unexpected. If you can predict every move, it isn't alive." That night, a drunk man gave Michael the unexpected. And Michael, ever the alchemist of sound and motion, turned it into gold. The fans never forgot. Years later, people still whispered about it. They shared the story in online forums, in fan documentaries, in countless YouTube clips uploaded from grainy old tapes, and every time the story was retold, it grew. Some swore the drunk man challenged Michael directly to a dance-off. Others claimed Michael whispered something kind to him as he helped him up. The details blurred, but the essence remained. Michael Jackson turned chaos into art. The incident with the drunk dancer wasn't just a funny interruption. That it was a glimpse into Michael Jackson's soul, because for all the headlines, the record sales, the screaming fans, Michael wasn't only chasing perfection, he was chasing humanity. That he wanted to connect. He wanted to take people higher, even if they stumbled, even if they fell. That night, when he lifted a stranger off the floor and danced with him instead of mocking him, he was making a statement without ever saying a word. Everyone deserves a moment in the spotlight. Michael's artistry had always lived in this tension, between control and chaos, between myth and man. He rehearsed obsessively, but he also left cracks open for magic to slip through. He was meticulous, but he was never mechanical, and that's why this story lives on. It's not because of the drunk man. It's not even because of the chaos. It's because Michael Jackson had the courage to embrace imperfection. Years later, fans still tell this story with the reverence of folklore. They remember the silence before the music, the roar of 80,000 voices, the sight of Michael mirroring a stranger's stumble until it became a dance. Some call it comedy. Others call it genius, but for those who truly understood Michael, it was something deeper. It was grace. Imagine the alternative. Security storms the stage. The man is dragged off, humiliated. The concert goes on. People forget, but that's not what happened. Instead, the king of pop created a story that outlived the show, outlived the tour, outlived even himself, because moments like this remind us why Michael Jackson wasn't just another performer. He wasn't just another singer or dancer. He was a phenomenon who could transform even the most unpredictable chaos into something unforgettable, and maybe that's why we're still talking about him today. Michael Jackson isn't just remembered for the moonwalk, the glove, the iconic music videos. He's remembered for the moments that can't be scripted. The times he showed us that magic is real, not because everything goes right, but because sometimes, when everything goes wrong, a true artist knows how to make it shine. That night, a drunk stranger tried to steal the spotlight. Instead of fighting it, Michael Jackson shared it. And in doing so, he reminded 80,000 fans, and millions more who would one day hear the story, why he will always be the king of pop. And now, as you sit here watching this story unfold, ask yourself, how many artists today would do the same? How many would see chaos, and instead of shutting it down, transform it into art? That was Michael's gift. That was his legacy. So if you believe this story deserves to live forever, if you believe Michael Jackson's magic still has the power to unite people, to inspire, to remind us that even imperfection can be beautiful, then don't let this just be another video you watched and forgot. Like it, comment on it, share it, subscribe for more stories that keep legends alive, and most of all, pass it on. Because legends like Michael Jackson don't fade, unless we let them. If you believe his story deserves to live forever, don't just watch this video, share it, and let the world remember the king of pop.